In the 2021 presidential elections, there were 393,500 invalid votes cast, equivalent to 3.6%. 9 of the 11 candidates in the race garnered far fewer votes than the invalid votes. The Forum for Democratic Change presidential candidate Patrick Amuriat Toboy, hitherto considered one of the most powerful, came in close to the invalid votes with 337,000 votes, representing 3.2%.
Just go back to your barracks, relax, as we do our work.
The 2021 election outcome was a replication of the trend experienced in the past 5 elections.
If you look at 2016, you have a record highest of invalid votes in Uganda. 500,000 invalid votes.
The 1996 election, which was the first to be conducted since the National Resistance Movement administration captured power 10 years earlier, saw 196,190 invalid votes, or about 3.2% of the 6 million ballots cast. In 2001, the electorate participated in the second election under the NRM, which produced a record low number of invalid votes at 180,000, which represent 2.5% of the 7.5 million votes cast. However, the number of invalid votes shot up in the following 2006 elections, which closed with 295,525 invalid votes. This was the first time the number of invalid votes had jumped to the 4.1% mark, which turned to be the case in the 2 subsequent polls held in 2011 and 2016. The 2011 polls also saw a slight percentage decline in the number of invalid votes. While the real number of the invalid votes cast jumped to 334,548, it represented 4% of the 8.2 million votes cast in 2011. The 2016 presidential election registered the highest number of the invalid votes cast. There were 10.3 million votes cast, of which 477,319, or about 4.6%, ended up as invalid votes. A slight drop in the number of invalid votes was registered in the violent 2021 presidential elections. There were 393,500 votes cast, or about 3.6%. A comparable number of invalid votes, or even more, is expected in the forthcoming 2026 general elections.
You'll find people, they take their choice, and then they go on the other people and cross and say, no, no, no. Some even go to the extent of writing within the ballot paper to say, I don't want you, I hate you, you are my man, you are my woman.
Without a clear understanding of the mind of the electorate, there is no solution in sight for how to end the phenomenon of invalid votes. However, election experts have ruled out the suspicion that the casting of the invalid votes could be a deliberate choice by the electorate.
Someone just goes and ticks, it goes into 2 boxes. It's not intentional. I wouldn't want to say that it's intentional. No, it's a bit of carelessness.
Excitement sometimes, perhaps. Deliberate invalidation by some voters, perhaps.
The puzzle is made much complicated by the fact that the percentage of literate persons stands at 74% higher today than it was the case in 1996. It is projected that there could be about 4 million first-time voters in 2026. However, a section of election experts is critical of the education system, blaming it for failing to equip future electors with a sense of civic responsibility.
But in this country, we've had a breakdown of all these structures where where people transformed as political subjects. So civics in schools, political education in schools, all those courses are not there anymore. And then we had Bulungi Wansi, where people would gather under a tree and discuss matters of their village so that they were made aware and they would participate. Those things are not there anymore.
If you look back to all our election observer reports, right from 1996, there is one issue that has been consistent. Low voter education, low civic education. Lack of funding for voter education, lack of funding for civic education. Increase voter education, increase civic education. Increase funding for voter education, increase funding for civic education. Those have been consistent.
Interventions by both the Electoral Commission, which is charged with voter education, and the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which is responsible for civic education, have fallen short of bridging the gap.
The Commission believes that the solution to addressing the question of invalid votes is to continue doing voter education, teaching the voters on how to vote, teaching the voters on why it is important that they should only use the marks that have been told of them and that are provided for in the law. That when you have ticked against your candidate, you don't need to do anything else on the ballot paper. Don't write there other things. Don't say very good, don't say very bad.
Well, civic education is comprehensive. It focuses on a citizen understanding their civic duties, the duties as they are in the Constitution, the rights and responsibilities.
The government is also accused of failing to prioritize resources for the conduct of the activities.
Budget, for instance, as the Uganda Human Rights Commission, for just the civic education component, is in the range of about 15 billion shillings annually. Out of that, I am not sure we get more than 150 million shillings to cover the entire country. You can see the gap.
Civil society organizations are also incapacitated in a way that previously there was a pullout of DGF, which was one of the major funders for democratic or civic engagements, but also the pulling out of USAID creates a whole bigger gap that even the civil society organizations that would fill that gap do not have resources to go and sensitize the masses or the public on how to tick the ballot.
The Electoral Commission suspects that the cause of the invalid votes is much more serious than imagined.
The Commission commissioned a study sampling different parts of the country where invalid votes were found to be in excess, and once that study, the outcomes of that study have been concluded, the Commission will be able to announce them so that people know what are some of those people who mark votes in an invalid manner, do what they do.
Amidst the uncertainties over the cause for the high number of invalid votes, there is a consensus that intensified voter and civic education could drastically reduce the number. Concern about the invalid votes is that it worsens the already bad situation of low voter turnout in deciding who gets to lead. Jackson Onyango, NTV.